They buried my dreams in a coffin made of other people's expectations. Every single person in this room knows exactly what that feels like. The weight of those expectations pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to move, hard to believe in yourself. But today, right here, right now, we're going to dig up those dreams. We're going to breathe life back into them. Because being weak isn't who you are. It's just who you've allowed yourself to become. Weakness isn't natural. Look at a newborn baby. That tiny human being, just hours old, already has the strength to grip your finger with surprising force. That same baby will cry loud enough to wake the entire house when it needs something. That baby doesn't care about convenience or other people's schedules. That baby is already a monster. Pure, unrestrained will to live, to grow, to thrive. What happened to us? When did we start apologizing for taking up space in this world? I saw a construction worker yesterday. He was breaking up concrete with a jackhammer. The noise was deafening. The vibration shook the entire street. Not once did he stop and say, "I'm sorry for the noise." Not once did he apologize for doing what needed to be done. That man understood something most of us have forgotten. When you're building something important, you don't apologize for the noise you make. But here we are, tiptoeing through our own lives, afraid to make too much noise, afraid to take up too much space, afraid to ask for what we want. We've become so good at being weak that we've convinced ourselves it's normal. When someone succeeds, really succeeds, people often say they're a monster. They say it about athletes who train while others sleep. They say it about entrepreneurs who work while others party. They say it about artists who create while others consume. Being called a monster isn't an insult. It's a badge of honor. It means you've broken free from the ordinary. It means you've stopped playing by rules designed to keep you small. Your weakness isn't protecting you. It's killing you, slowly, silently, one missed opportunity at a time, one abandoned dream at a time, one maybe tomorrow at a time. I remember watching a documentary about lions. There was this female lion, injured, limping, but when it came time to hunt, when her cubs needed food, she didn't lie down and wait for help. She didn't make excuses. She hunted, she killed, she fed her cubs, because that's what monsters do. They find a way. You're sitting here right now, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about all the reasons why you can't be that lion. You're thinking about your bad back, your lack of education, your responsibilities, your past failures. But let me ask you something. Are those really reasons, or are they excuses you've polished so well they shine like truth? Every single person in this room has a monster inside them. Every single one. That monster is your potential, your power, your true self. It's the part of you that refuses to settle, that pushes through pain, that demands more from life. But we've been taught to cage that monster. We've been taught to be reasonable, to fit in, to tone it down. Let me tell you what reasonable gets you. Reasonable gets you a life of quiet desperation. Reasonable gets you weekends waiting for Monday. Reasonable gets you I wish I had instead of I'm glad I did. There was this man I knew, worked in a factory for 30 years. Every day, same routine, same complaints, same small life. One day his doctor told him he had 6 months to live. Know what he did? He quit his job, sold everything he owned, and spent his last 6 months building houses for poor families in rural communities. When I asked him why, he said something I'll never forget. I finally realized that dying isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Living without purpose is. That man became a monster in his final months. He stopped being reasonable. He stopped being weak. And in those last 6 months, he lived more fully than he had in the previous 30 years. You want to know the secret to becoming a monster? It's simple. Stop asking for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop believing that comfort is the goal of life. When water is still, it becomes stagnant. It breeds mosquitoes. It becomes toxic. But when water moves, when it rushes down mountains and carves through rock, it becomes powerful. It becomes unstoppable. It becomes essential for life. Your weakness is that still water. Your excuses are the mosquitoes breeding in it. Your fear of discomfort is the toxicity growing day by day. But here's the beautiful thing about water. It can change in an instant. All it needs is a direction and a willingness to move. That's what we're doing here today. We're creating movement. We're choosing direction. We're embracing the monster within us that's been caged by convenience and comfort. When was the last time you did something that scared you? When was the last time you pushed past your own limitations? When was the last time you looked at your life and said, "This isn't enough"? I'm not talking about reckless behavior. I'm not talking about hurting others or destroying what you've built. I'm talking about controlled fury. I'm talking about channeled power. I'm talking about becoming the person you were meant to be before the world told you to be less. There was a woman in one of my seminars, middle-aged, quiet type. She sat in the back, took notes, barely spoke. On the last day, she came up to me and said, "I've spent my entire life being nice. I thought that's what good people do. But today I realized something. I've been using niceness as an excuse for cowardice. I've been using politeness to avoid confrontation. I've been using kindness as a mask for fear." That woman went back home and within 6 months had started her own business. Was she still nice? Yes. But now her niceness came from choice, not fear. Now her kindness came from strength, not weakness. That's what becoming a monster really means. It means choosing your behavior rather than letting your behavior choose you. It means being strong enough to be gentle when needed and tough enough to be firm when required. Look at your hands for a moment. Really look at them. These same hands that might tremble when you're nervous have the strength to lift weights, to build houses, to create art, to change lives. The only difference between trembling and strength is decision. The only difference between weakness and power is choice. You want to know why most people stay weak? It's not because they can't be strong. It's because strength requires responsibility. When you're weak, you can blame others. When you're strong, you have to own your life. When you're weak, you can make excuses. When you're strong, you have to make results. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's freedom. When you take responsibility for your life, you take control of your life. When you take control of your life, you become unstoppable. When you become unstoppable, you become a monster. I want you to think about something that scares you right now, something you've been avoiding, something you've been putting off. Got it in your mind? Good. That thing you're thinking of, that's not your enemy. That's your invitation. That's your opportunity to stop being weak and start being strong. Every great achievement in human history came from someone who refused to stay weak. Every invention, every discovery, every breakthrough came from someone who embraced their inner monster. They didn't do it by staying comfortable. They didn't do it by playing it safe. They did it by deciding that their dreams were more important than their fears. The world doesn't need more weak people. The world doesn't need more people who are just getting by. The world needs monsters. People who refuse to settle, who refuse to back down, who refuse to be ordinary. Your weakness ends today. Your excuses end today. Your small thinking ends today. Because today is the day you remember who you really are. Today is the day you unleash the monster within. Remember, the only difference between where you are and where you want to be is what you're willing to become. And becoming a monster, becoming the fullest, strongest, most powerful version of yourself, that's not just an option, it's your responsibility, it's your destiny. The question isn't, can you become a monster? The question is, how long will you continue to pretend that you're weak? You know what the biggest lie we tell ourselves is? I'm not ready yet. Those 4 words have killed more dreams than any failure ever has. Those 4 words are the comfortable cage we've built for ourselves. But here's something you need to understand. Ready isn't a feeling, it's a decision. Our bodies are designed to be powerful. When you start lifting weights, your muscles don't get stronger during the workout. They get stronger during the rest period when they repair themselves. The damage you cause during training becomes your strength. But what happens when you never push yourself? What happens when you never cause that necessary damage? Your body stays weak. Your potential stays dormant. The same principle applies to every aspect of your life. Your comfort zone isn't protecting you, it's limiting you. Your routines aren't serving you, they're imprisoning you. Your habits aren't supporting you, they're shackling you. Let me tell you about two types of pain. There's the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. Yet every day, people choose to carry tons tomorrow instead of ounces today. Have you ever watched a butterfly emerge from its cocoon? If you try to help it by breaking open the cocoon, you kill it. That struggle to break free is what forces fluid into its wings, giving it the strength to fly. Without that struggle, those wings will never develop properly. That butterfly needs that resistance. It needs that challenge. It needs that pain. You're no different. Your struggles aren't your enemies. They're your opportunities. Your challenges aren't your obstacles. They're your pathway. Your pain isn't your punishment. It's your preparation. But here's where most people get it wrong. They wait for motivation. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the perfect moment. Let me tell you something about motivation. It's like a hot shower. It feels great while you're in it, but it doesn't last. You need to act even when you don't feel motivated. You need to move even when you don't feel inspired. You need to build even when you don't feel ready. There was a carpenter who spent 30 years building houses for others. Every house he built, he cut corners. Not enough to be noticed, but enough to make his job easier. Small compromises, tiny shortcuts. When he was ready to retire, his boss asked him to build one final house. "Build it as if it were your own," the boss said. But the carpenter stuck to his habits. He used cheaper materials. He rushed the job. When he finished, his boss handed him the keys. "This house is yours, my retirement gift to you." The carpenter had to live in the house he'd built with all its compromises and shortcuts. That's what life does. It gives you the house you build. Every corner you cut, every effort you skip, every challenge you avoid, you're building your own prison. Every excuse you make, every responsibility you dodge, every opportunity you waste. You're designing your own limitations. Want to know what separates monsters from the weak? Monsters understand this truth. Excellence isn't an act, it's a habit. Strength isn't a gift, it's a choice. Power isn't an inheritance, it's a cultivation. Look at nature. A lion doesn't wake up and decide to be fierce today. A storm doesn't choose to be powerful. An oak tree doesn't try to be strong. They simply express their nature. Your weakness isn't your nature, it's your nurture. It's what you've been taught, it's what you've accepted, it's what you've allowed. There was this ancient practice where warriors would burn their boats upon arriving on enemy shores. Why? Because they understood something fundamental about human nature. When there's no way back, the only way is forward. When retreat isn't an option, victory becomes the only choice. How many boats are you keeping safely anchored in your harbor? How many backup plans are keeping you from fully committing to your dreams? How many safety nets are preventing you from flying? The weak keep their boats. They keep their options open. They keep their escape routes clear. Monsters burn the boats. They commit totally. They go all in. But let me be clear about something. Becoming a monster isn't about being aggressive or intimidating. It's about being unstoppable. It's about being relentless. It's about being committed to excellence in every moment. Water can carve through mountains, not because it's aggressive, but because it's persistent. It doesn't try to break the mountain in a day. It doesn't get discouraged when progress is slow. It just keeps flowing, keeps pushing, keeps moving forward. And that's what monsters do. They don't try to change everything in a day. They don't expect instant transformation. They simply commit to consistent, relentless forward motion. Every morning you have a choice. You can choose to remain weak, to accept your limitations, to embrace your excuses, to nurture your fears. Or you can choose to be a monster, to challenge your limitations, to destroy your excuses, to face your fears. The world will tell you to be reasonable. The world will tell you to be realistic. The world will tell you to be practical. But tell me, who built the pyramids by being reasonable? Who discovered new continents by being realistic? Who changed the world by being practical? There's a voice inside you that's been silenced by years of compromise. There's a strength inside you that's been dormant from lack of use. There's a monster inside you that's been caged by convention. Today, we're not just talking about breaking free. We're talking about breaking through. We're not just talking about getting better. We're talking about becoming unstoppable. We're not just talking about improving. We're talking about transforming. Every excuse you've ever made has been a brick in the wall between you and your potential. Every time you've said, I can't, you've added another brick. Every time you've said, I'm not ready, you've added another layer of mortar. Monsters do not interact with walls. Monsters don't compromise with obstacles. Monsters don't deal with boundaries. Your weakness ends when your decision begins. Your transformation starts the moment you decide that who you want to become is more important than who you've been. Your journey to becoming a monster begins with a single, unshakable commitment. No more excuses, no more delays, no more weakness. Remember, the world doesn't reward people for what they know. The world rewards people for what they do. The world doesn't care about your intentions. The world responds to your actions. The world isn't moved by your potential. The world is changed by your performance. What are you going to do with this moment? Will you continue to hide behind your excuses? Will you continue to embrace your weakness? Or will you finally unleash the monster within? The monster you need to become is already inside you. It's been there all along, waiting for permission to emerge, waiting for you to stop being reasonable, waiting for you to stop being practical, waiting for you to stop being weak. Today, you give that monster permission. Today, you set that power free. Today, you begin your transformation from what you've accepted to what you can become. Do you know what fascinates me about bamboo? For the first 4 years after planting, you see almost nothing above ground. All that time, it's building an elaborate root system underground. Then, in the 5th year, it grows up to 90 feet in just 6 weeks. Most people would have given up during those 4 years of apparent inaction. They would have called it a failure. They would have torn it out of the ground, never knowing they were just weeks away from extraordinary growth. Your life right now might feel like those first 4 years. You're working, you're pushing, you're trying, but you don't see the results you want. The weak quit during this phase. They call it failure. They call it bad luck. They call it fate. But monsters? Monsters understand that this is precisely when they need to push harder, dig deeper, commit more fully. Let me tell you something about strength that might surprise you. True strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting up one more time than you fall. It's about facing failure after failure and still believing in yourself. It's about hearing no 1,000 times and still asking again. There was a stonemason who spent years hitting a large boulder with a hammer. Each day, he would strike the rock hundreds of times. People walked by and laughed. They called him crazy. They said he was wasting his time. Then one day, on what seemed like an ordinary strike, the boulder split perfectly in two. It wasn't that final hit that split the rock. It was all the hits that came before it. That's how transformation works. That's how you become a monster. It's not one decision, one action, one moment. It's the accumulated impact of thousands of small decisions, actions, and moments. But here's what separates the weak from the monsters. The weak need to see progress to continue. Monsters understand that progress isn't always visible. The weak need constant validation. Monsters find validation in their effort. The weak chase motivation. Monsters create momentum. Every thought you have creates a neural pathway in your brain. The more you think that thought, the stronger that pathway becomes. When you tell yourself you're weak, you strengthen the weakness pathway. When you make excuses, you strengthen the excuse pathway. When you avoid challenges, you strengthen the avoidance pathway. You can create new pathways. You can strengthen new connections. You can literally rewire your mind for strength instead of weakness, for action instead of avoidance, for growth instead of stagnation. The process is simple, but it's not easy. Every time you push through discomfort, you create a new pathway. Every time you face a fear, you create a new pathway. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you create a new pathway. Do you know what most people do when they feel fear? They retreat, they back down, they look for safety. But fear isn't your enemy. Fear is your compass. Fear points directly to where you need to go. Fear marks the boundary between who you are and who you could become. There was a study done with eagles. Scientists discovered that eagles can spot their prey from 3 kilometers away. But here's what's fascinating. An eagle doesn't just see its prey, it sees everything that stands between it and its prey. It sees every obstacle, every challenge, every potential problem. But the eagle doesn't focus on the obstacles. It doesn't get discouraged by the challenges. It focuses on its target. That's what monsters do. They don't ignore obstacles, they acknowledge them. They don't pretend challenges don't exist. They prepare for them. But they never lose sight of their target. They never let the obstacles become bigger than their goals. The weak spend their lives avoiding problems. Monsters spend their lives solving problems. The weak see challenges as burdens. Monsters see challenges as opportunities. The weak ask, why me? Monsters ask, why not me? Let me tell you about energy. Most people think they need to feel energetic to take action, but that's backward. Energy doesn't create action. Action creates energy. Movement generates momentum. Start generates strength. Have you ever noticed how the hardest part of any task is starting? The hardest part of exercise is putting on your workout clothes. The hardest part of writing is opening the blank document. The hardest part of any change is making that first move. That's why the weak never transform. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel certain. But certainty is the enemy of growth. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Safety is the enemy of strength. Monsters understand that growth happens in uncertainty. Strength develops in discomfort. Power emerges from challenge. A diamond doesn't start as a diamond, it starts as carbon. It becomes a diamond through intense pressure and heat. Without that pressure, without that heat, it remains just carbon. Your challenges, your struggles, your pain, that's your pressure. That's your heat. That's your transformation process. But here's what most people get wrong about transformation. They think it's about adding something to themselves. They think they need more knowledge, more skills, more resources. But becoming a monster isn't about addition. It's about elimination. It's about removing the limitations you've accepted. It's about stripping away the excuses you've accumulated. It's about shedding the fear you've embraced. But every time you say, I can't, you're choosing to remain weak. Every time you say, I'm not ready, you're choosing to stay small. Every time you say, maybe tomorrow, you're choosing to deny your potential. The world is full of people waiting for the perfect moment. The world is full of people waiting for permission. The world is full of people waiting for someone else to validate their dreams. But monsters don't wait, they create. Monsters don't ask permission, they take action. Monsters don't need validation, they create their own proof. Your transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were before the world convinced you to be less. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about remembering your strength. It's about awakening your inner monster. Look at your life right now. Look at your habits, your choices, your actions. Are they the habits, choices, and actions of someone who's committed to transformation? Are they the habits, choices, and actions of someone who's determined to become unstoppable? Are they the habits, choices, and actions of a monster in the making? Every choice you make is either feeding your weakness or fueling your strength. Every decision you make is either reinforcing your limitations or breaking through them. Every action you take is either keeping you small or helping you grow. The weak live in the world of what if. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if it doesn't work out? Monsters live in the world of even if. Even if I fail, I'll learn. Even if people judge me, I'll grow. Even if it doesn't work out, I'll be stronger. Your transformation begins the moment you stop accepting your weakness as your identity. Your growth starts the moment you stop using your past as an excuse for your future. Your strength emerges the moment you decide that your potential is more important than your comfort. Remember, the monster you need to become isn't some distant, unreachable ideal. It's already within you, waiting for you to have the courage to embrace it, waiting for you to have the strength to unleash it, waiting for you to have the commitment to become it. Have you ever watched an avalanche? It starts with a single snowflake shifting, one tiny movement that triggers a cascade of unstoppable force. That's what we're doing here today. We're not just talking about change, we're creating that first shift, that first movement, that first breakthrough that will trigger an avalanche of transformation in your life. But let me tell you something about transformation that nobody talks about. It's not comfortable, it's not pretty, it's not smooth. Real transformation is messy. Real growth is painful. Real change is chaotic. Think about a snake shedding its skin. During that process, the snake is blind. It's vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. But that snake doesn't stop halfway through because it's uncomfortable. It doesn't quit because it's vulnerable. It pushes through because that discomfort, that vulnerability, that struggle is the price of growth. The weak try to avoid this discomfort. They try to find the easy way. They look for shortcuts. But monsters understand that the discomfort is the way. The struggle is the path. The resistance is the road. And let me tell you about responsibility. Most people hear that word and think of burden. They think of obligation. They think of weight. But responsibility isn't a burden. It's power. When you take responsibility for everything in your life, you take control of everything in your life. The weak blame circumstances. They blame other people, they blame the economy, the weather, the timing, the stars. Monsters understand that blame is just another word for powerlessness. Every time you blame something or someone else, you give away your power to change it. There was a prisoner of war who spent 7 years in captivity. Every day he would walk through his tiny cell 4 steps each way. In his mind, he wasn't walking in a cell, he was playing golf. He visualized every hole, every swing, every putt. When he was finally released, he played a round of golf and shot his best score ever. His body was imprisoned, but his mind remained free. His circumstances were limiting, but his spirit remained unbound. That's what monsters understand. Your circumstances don't define you. Your response to them does. Your situation doesn't determine your outcome. Your decisions do. Your past doesn't dictate your future. Your choices do. They want the transformation without the transition. They want the strength without the struggle. They want the power without the process. Think about a sword for a moment. Before it becomes a sword, it's just raw metal. That metal must be heated until it's almost melting. It must be hammered repeatedly. It must be folded and refolded, heated and reheated, hammered and rehammered. Only through this brutal process does it become something extraordinary. Your challenges are your forge. Your struggles are your hammer. Your pain is your process. Every difficulty you face, every obstacle you encounter, every setback you experience, these aren't blocking your transformation. They are your transformation. The weak see difficulty and ask, why is this happening to me? Monsters see difficulty and ask, what is this teaching me? The weak see obstacles and say, this is impossible. Monsters see obstacles and say, this is necessary. Let me tell you about strength. Real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. It's not about being feared. It's about being respected. It's not about being untouchable. It's about being unshakable. There was a martial arts master who was asked why he continued to practice basic moves even after 50 years of training. He said, I am not practicing moves. I am practicing patience. I am practicing discipline. I am practicing perseverance. That's what becoming a monster really means. It's not just about what you do. It's about who you become in the process. It's not just about achieving goals. It's about developing character. It's not just about reaching destinations. It's about who you become on the journey. Most people live their lives like thermometers. They react to their environment. When things are good, they feel good. When things are bad, they feel bad. But monsters live like thermostats. They set the temperature. They influence their environment. They create their conditions. Your weakness has been your thermometer, reacting, responding, reflecting. Your monster is your thermostat, creating, controlling, commanding. A lighthouse doesn't move to avoid the storms. It doesn't bend to accommodate the waves. It stands firm, unwavering, unchanging. The storms come and go, but the lighthouse remains. That's what monsters do. They don't adapt to circumstances. They adapt circumstances to them. They don't conform to situations. They transform situations. They don't react to life. They create life. But here's the part about transformation that most people miss. It's not a destination. It's a direction. You don't suddenly arrive at being a monster. You make the choice to become one in every moment, with every decision, through every action. The weak think transformation is an event. Monsters know it's a process. The weak wait for the perfect moment to change. Monsters know that every moment is perfect for change. The weak want guarantees before they commit. Monsters know that commitment creates its own guarantees. Look at nature again. A river doesn't ask permission to flow. A tree doesn't apologize for growing tall. A mountain doesn't justify its height. They simply express their nature fully, completely, without reservation. Your weakness isn't your nature, it's your habit. Your smallness isn't your destiny, it's your decision. Your limitations aren't your reality, they're your beliefs. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're feeding your weakness. Every time you choose safety over possibility, you're strengthening your chains. Every time you choose the known over the unknown, you're building your prison. But here's the beautiful thing about prisons: they only work if you accept them. They only hold you if you believe in them. They only limit you if you allow them. The monster within you doesn't accept prisons. The monster within you doesn't believe in limitations. The monster within you doesn't allow restrictions. Your transformation isn't about becoming something alien to yourself. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about removing the layers of fear, doubt, and hesitation that have covered your true nature. It's about unleashing the power that's always been within you. Remember, every great achievement in history was created by someone who refused to be ordinary. Every breakthrough was made by someone who rejected limitations. Every advancement was driven by someone who embraced their inner monster. The world doesn't need more comfortable people. The world doesn't need more compliant people. The world doesn't need more ordinary people. The world needs monsters, people who dare to be extraordinary, who dare to be powerful, who dare to be transformative. Your monster isn't your enemy, it's your ally. Your power isn't your adversary, it's your birthright. Your strength isn't your opponent, it's your nature. Today, you stop waiting for transformation. Today, you stop hoping for change. Today, you stop wishing for power. Today, you become the monster you were always meant to be. Stand up. Right now, everyone stand up. Feel the strength in your legs. Feel the power in your spine. Feel the energy coursing through your body. This is who you really are. This is what you were meant to be. This is your true nature. The time for sitting quietly is over. The time for playing small is over. The time for being weak is over. You know what's fascinating about human beings? We're the only creatures on earth who deliberately operate at less than our full capacity. Lions don't decide to hunt at half strength. Eagles don't choose to fly at half speed. Wolves don't opt to run at half power. Only humans choose weakness over strength. But today that changes. Today we stop choosing weakness. Today we embrace our full capacity. Today we become monsters. Let me tell you about power, real power. It's not about controlling others. It's not about dominating circumstances. It's about absolute mastery over yourself. It's about complete command of your potential. It's about total commitment to your growth. The weak live in the shallow waters of life where it's safe, where it's comfortable, where it's predictable. But monsters swim in the deep. They thrive in the unknown. They flourish in the challenging depths where few dare to venture. Mountains. The higher you climb, the more the air thins. The higher you go, the harder it becomes to breathe. The higher you reach, the more isolated you become. Most people use these challenges as reasons to stay in the valley. Monsters use these challenges as reasons to climb higher. Your excuses have been your medicine. They've numbed your pain, dulled your hunger, quieted your ambition. But monsters don't need medicine. Monsters need challenges. Monsters need resistance. Monsters need opposition. There was a farmer who prayed for stronger crops, but instead of rain, he got storms. Instead of gentle sunlight, he got scorching heat. Instead of mild weather, he got harsh conditions. He cursed his bad luck until he realized something. His crops weren't just surviving these conditions, they were becoming stronger because of them. Those storms forced the roots to grow deeper. That heat made the stalks more resilient. Those harsh conditions created stronger crops than any gentle weather could have produced. Your challenges aren't your curses, they're your blessings. Your obstacles aren't your enemies, they're your allies. Your struggles aren't your punishment, they're your path to power. The weak pray for easier lives. Monsters pray for stronger backs. The weak ask for fewer problems. Monsters ask for better solutions. The weak hope for favorable conditions. Monsters create favorable conditions. And look at your hands again. These hands can build or destroy. These hands can create or dismantle. These hands can shape your destiny or wave goodbye to your dreams. The choice isn't in your hands. It's in your decisions. Every moment of every day, you're making choices. Every decision, every action, every response is either feeding your weakness or fueling your monster. There is no neutral ground. There is no standing still. You're either growing or dying, advancing or retreating, becoming stronger or becoming weaker. The weak think small actions don't matter. Monsters know that every action matters. The weak believe some moments aren't important. Monsters know that every moment is crucial. The weak think there's always tomorrow. Monsters know that now is all that exists. Let me tell you about time. Time isn't just passing. It's either being invested or being spent. Every minute you spend in weakness is a minute you could have spent in strength. Every hour you waste in hesitation is an hour you could have used for growth. Every day you live in fear is a day you could have lived in power. There was a master sculptor who was asked how he created such beautiful statues. He said, "I don't create the statue. The statue already exists within the stone. I simply remove everything that isn't the statue." Your monster already exists within you. It's not something you need to create. It's something you need to uncover. It's not something you need to build. It's something you need to unveil. It's not something you need to become. It's something you need to release. Every excuse you eliminate is another layer of stone removed. Every fear you face is another piece of marble stripped away. Every limitation you break through is another chunk of rock cleared away to reveal your true nature. The weak are always preparing to live. Monsters are already living. The weak are always planning to change. Monsters are already changing. The weak are always waiting to become. Monsters are already becoming. Your life isn't a dress rehearsal. This isn't a practice run. This isn't a warm-up. This is your life, right here, right now, in this moment. And in this moment, you have a choice. Will you continue to embrace weakness, or will you unleash your monster? Fire doesn't question its nature. Fire doesn't doubt its power. Fire doesn't hesitate to burn. Fire simply expresses what it is, fully, completely, without reservation. Your power is like that fire. Your strength is like that flame. Your monster is like that blaze. It doesn't need permission to burn bright. It doesn't need validation to shine. It doesn't need approval to transform everything it touches. The world tries to convince you that being ordinary is safe, that being average is acceptable, that being weak is normal. But deep inside, you know the truth. You weren't born to be safe. You weren't created to be average. You weren't designed to be weak. Your monster isn't something to be feared. It's something to be embraced. Your power isn't something to be contained. It's something to be unleashed. Your strength isn't something to be rationed. It's something to be expressed. Every great story of transformation began with a single moment of decision. Every journey of change started with a single step of commitment. Every path to power began with a single choice of courage. This is your moment. This is your step. This is your choice. The weak will leave here today and return to their comfortable lives. They'll return to their familiar excuses. They'll return to their well-worn limitations. But monsters will leave here transformed. Monsters will leave here committed. Monsters will leave here unstoppable. Remember, the world doesn't reward you for what you could have done. The world doesn't celebrate what you might have become. The world doesn't care about your potential. The world responds to what you do, who you become, how you live. Your time of weakness ends today. Your era of excuses ends today. Your period of playing small ends today. Because today, right now in this moment, you make a choice. You make a commitment. You make a decision. Today, you stop being weak. Today, you embrace your power. Today, you become a monster. The only question that remains is, are you ready to burn your boats? Are you ready to cross your Rubicon? Are you ready to unleash your monster? Because the monster isn't coming, the monster is here. The transformation isn't approaching, the transformation is now. The moment isn't arriving, the moment is this one. Right here, right now, on this breath, this heartbeat, and this instant, your monster awaits.